Well, good morning, Journey. Welcome to worship. We're so glad to have you here in person, and hopefully we got online work, and we're glad to have you too. If you are a visitor, if this is your first time here at Journey, thanks for being here. We're glad to have you as a guest. Make sure that you stop by that front desk. We would love to tell you about all the great things that we have going on here at our church, and we have a gift for you. So we are kicking off our new sermon series. It's the most wonderful time of the year, and Jeremy's sermon today is entitled Mean People. And I said, Jeremy, I know someone that loves to write about mean people, and that's Miss Taylor Swift. So we're going to do a little Taylor Swift for you this morning, but first we're going to show you some announcements.
Hey Journey, good morning and Merry Christmas. We're so glad you're with us today, whether you're here in person or you're watching online. We have a few announcements for you just before we get started. We are so excited that Grinchmas is finally here this week, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, December 8th, 9th, and 10th. You can find more information on the Journey app. We also want to go ahead and give you a heads up about our Christmas Eve service times. We have 3 this year, Friday, December 23rd at 7 p.m. and Saturday, December 24th at 11 a.m. and 9 p.m. Childcare will be provided at each of those services. That does mean that there will be no services on Sunday, Christmas morning. Finally, if you're a guest with us today, we want to say thank you for being here today. We have a gift for you at the welcome desk just for being here. For everything else, you can download the Journey app and find information there. Enjoy the rest of the service.
You, with your words like knives and swords and weapons that you use against me, you have knocked me off my feet again, got me feeling like I'm nothing to you. With your voice like nails on a chalkboard, calling me out when I'm wounded you, picking on the weaker man. You can take me down with just one single blow, but you don't know. Someday I'll be living in a big old city, and all you're ever gonna be is me. Someday I'll be big enough so you can't hit me, and all you're ever gonna be is me. Why you gonna be so mean? You, with your switching sides and your awkward lies and your humiliation, you have pointed out my flaws again as if I don't already see them. I want my head down, trying to block you out 'cause I'll never impress you. I just wanna feel okay again. I bet you got pushed around, somebody made you come. But you don't know. Someday I'll be living in a big old city, and all you're ever gonna be is me. Someday I'll be big enough so you can't hit me, and all you're ever gonna be is me. Why you gotta be so mean? And I can see you years from now, talking over a football game. The same loud opinion, nobody's listening. Washed up and ranting about the same old bitter things. Drunk and grumbling on about how I can't sing. All you are is mean. All you are is mean, and a liar, and pathetic, and alone in life, and mean, and mean, and mean. Oh, someday I'll be living in a big old city, and all you're ever gonna be is mean. Someday I'll be big enough
Thanks, everyone. Why don't you go ahead and stand up and say hello to someone around you, then have a seat for us.
Well, good morning. We're so glad you guys are here with us. Let's just go ahead and get first things first out of the way. Yes, I did move every seat in the sanctuary, and some of you are freaking out right now. I can tell. And so it's just the way it's going to be for now, and we'll talk about it later. So we're so glad you guys are here with us today. To start, we have to do a couple things. And so because of your guys' generosity, so you guys that don't know, last month was my birthday, and so my birthday wish was that we would be generous to our community. And so you guys went above and beyond, and so we got some pictures of some of the stuff that we were able to do. So we were able to provide 75 families with Thanksgiving meals last month. Head Start had reached out to us and said they needed 90 coats for the kids in their program. And so they were like, if you guys can come up with some, well, thanks to you guys, we came up with all 90 coats. And so they were blown away when they came and collected that on Tuesday of this week. And then also, we have been collecting toys and all kinds of stuff for Operation Santa. You guys have been donating to that. They have 400 kids that are in need of stuff, and so we're going to continue to collect that stuff through next week. The bad thing about being very generous and being good at generosity is that when people find out you're willing to be generous, they're going to keep asking you to do stuff. So on top of the 75 families we were able to feed at Thanksgiving, they've come back and asked if we can feed another 75 for Christmas, and we, of course, said sure. And so what we need is for you guys, if you're willing, because I know a lot of y'all get to participate, or some of you all, I won't name names because I don't know who you are, you took a bag and didn't bring it back, so that's okay too. It happens. I get it. But some of you will probably already have the food. So all we're asking is if you're willing, grab a bag. You don't have to provide the meat this time. We have another partner in Southeast Christian that's providing all of the turkeys. And so if you can do the bags of food, that would be awesome. And so if you have some time, if not, we understand. But we are trying to feed another 75 families for Christmas this year. But thank you guys for your generosity. Also, if you want to donate toys and stuff for Operation Santa, we'll be collecting that stuff through next week. Now, we are starting a new series today, and I'm super excited about some of the content we're going to cover. Christmas is the most wonderful time of the year, but it can also be very difficult because typically at Christmas we're around a lot of people, and people are difficult, but it's okay because you're difficult too. And so we're all in this together. I've already heard some stories from friends and even some of you guys about some of the interesting things that come up at Thanksgiving. People say you shouldn't talk about like sports and religion and politics at Thanksgiving, and if you're like some families, that's all you want to talk about at Thanksgiving, and so it causes some problems. And so the reality is outside of even the season, it's just hard being a human sometimes. It's hard to get along with everybody. Every single week it feels like there's stories that just can divide us and cause all of this tension between people. And then on top of that, some people are just mean. Some people are just rude. Some people are unkind. I talk to people all the time, and they're like, I'd be a perfect human except for other humans. And I'm like, well, that's just a problem we're going to have. And so the reality is, as we talk about this next couple weeks, what you have to realize is as we talk about mean people and how we can respond to them in a way that hopefully moves the envelope along and makes us all a little bit better as people, what you have to realize is as we talk about mean people and how to deal with them, the reality is that you need to know that there could be somebody that thinks about you. That while there are mean people, every single one of us has and will be and is capable of being a mean person. We're capable of being unkind to people. We're capable of hurting people's feelings. We do this. And it's just part of being human. And so what we want to do is try to get a handle on it as best as we can. Mean people, if you know anybody that's mean, they can be deceptive. They can be controlling. They can be unpredictable. They can be manipulative. Mean people kind of, get us off balance sometimes. We don't know how to respond. So the easiest way to respond for most of us is that whenever someone's mean to us, we're just mean back to them, right? And so if they were mean to me, I'm going to be mean back to them. The problem with that is sometimes when you do that, you give them a measure of control over your life. The problem with trying to get even with somebody sometimes is that you're getting even with somebody that you don't even like, right? And so we're even now. Well, are you really even? And so that's can be a difficult thing. It's difficult not to be mean to mean people. We just want to do that. It's difficult not to be unkind to unkind people. If someone's rude to me or unkind to me, I feel like that I have full justification to do that to them. It's difficult to be sensitive to people that are insensitive, right? There's this golden rule thing that we talk about a lot, and it's the idea you treat people the way that you want to be treated, and that works for people that treat us well. But then there's the iron rule, which is do unto others as they have done unto you. Right? And so we just kind of throw the golden rule out the window. And so we feel like that we can get back at this person. If they were not nice to me, if they were mean to me, then I have all the right to be mean to them. Here's the question, and just think about this. How's that working? Like, is that going well for us? Because the problem is, how do you know if you've been mean enough? It always seems to escalate, as we're going to talk about a little bit today. It always seems to get worse. And the problem with a lot of this is it makes you like somebody you don't even like, right? It brings you down. It sometimes gives them power. And so is there a third option or another option besides just being mean back to them or just ignoring them? Is there something else that we can do? And we're going to talk about that a little bit the next couple weeks. The other kind of thing about mean people sometimes is sometimes we have to realize that when someone is rude to us or mean to us, sometimes we're not even the problem. Sometimes it's about something else that's going on. The other thing that we have to be aware of when it comes to this attitude we have sometimes is it never stays isolated and often to the proper relationship. So what I mean by that is sometimes when someone's mean to me, I take it out on other people. All right, if I've had a bad day at work or if something's happened that I don't like, sometimes, and maybe it's just me, probably just me, nobody else in this room, I'm sure, sometimes I take that home with me. And then I end up being mean and short with the people at home who have nothing to do with the actual problem at hand. Sometimes what you realize, and maybe this is some of your all's stories, and we're going to talk about a character today that this was part of his story. Sometimes what you realize is the reason they're mad is because something else happened. Some of us, when we look at the way we are, it's because of how we were raised. And sometimes we had parents that were angry a lot. And then eventually you get old enough that you realize they're not even angry with me. They just took it out on me. They're actually angry because of something their father or their mother or somebody else did along the way. Sometimes it's because the people are just angry at life. And so their anger and their meanness overflows to the people that are in their lives, the people that they're in relationship with, the people that they work with, the people that happen to live in their household. And so if we don't want to become mean people, which is a really easy option, what else can we do? Now, Jesus modeled what we're going to talk about today, and we're going to kind of hit it at the end and then go back into it next week. But I do want to tell you a story. And it's a fascinating story. It's kind of a long story, so you got to kind of pay attention. The characters in this story, you're only going to be familiar with this point in one person. And this is going to be the story of a guy named King David. Now, if you grew up in church, you've probably heard this name before. If you haven't grown up in church, you've probably still heard this name because everybody knows the story of David and Goliath. David is the shepherd boy who goes into this situation where he takes on this Goliath, this man that's torturing the people there, that's torturing King Saul. And David, he believes that his God is able to provide for him. And so he goes into this situation with just a slingshot and he takes down the mighty Goliath. Now, when he does this, he becomes a national hero, a national treasure. Everybody knows his name. Everybody's talking about him. In fact, King Saul, once he realizes he has this guy that's fearless, but also loyal to God and people are loyal to him, it's kind of this amazing thing. He brings David in, kind of into his fold, but he also brings him into his family. David marries Saul's daughter. And so now it's part of his family. It's this amazing thing. But the problem is, as the story of David and what David continues to do grows, he starts to have more influence than even King Saul. And Saul is a very jealous man, and so he becomes jealous of David. He even starts to say things about David, tell people about David. It eventually gets to the point where Saul actually is trying to kill David. So just so you know, if your father-in-law is trying to kill you, it's not going well. All right? I mean, literally, he's trying to kill him, not just talking about it. There's active times he's trying to kill him because he sees David as a threat to his dynasty. He sees David a threat to his kingdom, and he eventually banishes David and makes David a fugitive in the land. Now, David has gotten the respect of a lot of men because at this point he's still a man of integrity for the most part. And people also see what David's capable of. Not only is he a man of integrity, I mean, he really is a warrior. Like, he's able to go in, not only take on Goliath, but there's story after story of David going in and doing these amazing things. And he's a man's man. And so all of these men are willing to follow David. And so he's a fugitive. And so now are these guys. So about 600 guys go with David, and they go and they live out in the mountains. And they're hoping that they can outlast Saul. Because David's a man of integrity, he realizes that God's story is probably not for him to kill Saul, but also he realizes at this point, even with 600 guys, Saul's untouchable. He still commands the mighty army of Israel. And so David's frustrated. And he's out here on the run. He's angry with the circumstance. He's probably angry with Saul, but he can't get to Saul. And that's what brings us to this part of the story. So he's out here on this mountain, and nearby is this area called Carmel. And on this kind of area, there's a guy named Nabal. Now, Nabal is a farmer. He's a shepherd. And so he's got about 1,000 goats and 3,000 sheep. Now, we hear about that, and we don't think much about it, but that is currency in their world. Those animals, those livestock, that's as good as money, okay? But what's also really good is when you have about 3,000 sheep, the wool is very valuable. And so every year you let the wool grow out and then you shear the sheep, and then that becomes currency, and you find out how wealthy you are during the season you're able to shear the sheep. Now, because of the way the world worked back then, there's all kinds of robbers and there's thieves and there's people that will come and take from you. It's a very hand-to-mouth culture. There's also people just trying to survive. So if they see a sheep, they'll take it, they'll take the wool, they'll take the meat, they'll do whatever they can. And so it's also incredibly hard to keep protection over your livestock. Eventually they start paying people to actually not only shepherd, but also protect the livestock. But in this particular story, David is in this mountain. Nabal and his livestock are kind of in this valley in Carmel. And so what we find out is because everybody is still kind of afraid of David and nobody's going to challenge David, they want to stay away from him because they're not sure what he's going to do. And so a byproduct of David and his proximity to Nabal and his livestock is nobody's messing with his livestock. And so that year, what he finds out is that Nabal is actually richer than he thought because nobody's taken his livestock, nothing's happened to his livestock, and so he actually comes out ahead. And so David kind of realizes this, and people start talking about this and all this stuff and how good of a year Nabal had. And so David kind of has this idea. He's like, so we're up here on this mountain, and we're barely getting by. And there's this guy Nabal down there who's actually benefited from us being there, and he's become really, really wealthy because of our proximity to him. And so maybe what we could do is just kind of go down and ask him, if, hey, we'll stay here, we'll leave your stuff alone, but would you give us some food and some water and supplies, and we'll keep staying here, we'll make sure nobody messes with your stuff. And so he goes to Nabal, and he makes what we would assume is kind of a reasonable request. Everybody, as we're going to see, is aware of the fact that the reason that Nabal's livestock has done so well is because nobody wants to mess with David. And so he goes down and he makes this request. He sends 10 guys, and the 10 guys go to Nabal, and they kind of explain the situation, and they're essentially saying, like, hey, part of your kind of success right here is due to our protection. And so, would you be willing, we're not trying to take anything from you, but if you have some extra, would you kind of send it our way? And so Nabal, he kind of stands there for a second, he thinks about the situation, and he goes, no. In fact, he doesn't just say no, he says this. Who is this David? Like, who's this guy? Everybody knows who David is. Who is David? Who is this son of Jesse? Like who is this guy? Who's just a bandit? He's a fugitive. He's a nobody. I didn't ask for his help. So why should I feel any responsibility to help him? It's fine that all worked out that way, but no, who is this guy? And he insults David, and he tells his men, you go back and you tell him exactly what I just said. And so the men, they're kind of like, okay. So they get up and they go back to David, and they're like, well, he kind of said this about you. And then he was like, he realizes that your protection was helpful, but he doesn't owe you anything because it wasn't like an agreement that we had. And so David's like, okay. And so David's response to this situation is, well, that makes sense. So, okay, better luck next time. That is not his response at all. David looks at his men, 400 plus warriors, and he says, each of you strap on a sword, and I'll strap on mine. and we're going to go down there and we're going to take care of this situation. Slight bit of an overreaction to Nabal and maybe like 12 shepherds, right? 400 warriors versus 12 kind of guys that are just kind of getting by. I mean, this is part of the problem of revenge, right? Like when someone hurts us, when someone's wrong to us, someone's mean to us, it's almost always an overreaction, right? Like you ate some of my Skittles, I'm going to stab you in the kneecap so hard, right? Because you've wronged me, and so now I've got to do this. And then here's the problem. Now, because what do we say? What do we all say whenever we're doing this? I've got to get even. Are we even now? Because now I've wronged you, and now all of a sudden, now there's this imbalance again. I mean, Nabal was mean. He should not have insulted David. That was dumb. And he should not be, he should realize the situation. People are telling him about it. Hey, we had a great year because David and his men were there, and they not only took care of us and protected us, they never stole from us. They never did anything. Like, we should be grateful that they're there. And now all of a sudden, here's David, and he's riding down this mountain with 400 men, and it's about to be a massacre. And he's riding along, and he does what all of us kind of do when these situations pop up. He's building a head of steam, and he's beginning to justify what he's doing. You ever done that? You ever been in that situation where like, okay, I'm not sure I should be doing this, but as we think about it, as we drive there, as we walk there, like we're all of a sudden, we're just making this, I mean, we're vilifying people, we're putting things in that, and listen to what he says. He starts to even in his own mind changes the situation to justify what he's going to do. Listen to what he says in verse 21. It's been useless, all this watching over this fellow's property in the wilderness so that nothing of his was missing. I mean, that's great, David, and you were helpful and all that. There was never an agreement. Nobody asked you to do this. But in his mind, he's trying to justify what he's about to do. He has paid me evil for good. He's wronged me. This guy's a jerk. Who is David? I'm about to show him who David is. I'm about to walk down here. You don't know who my name is? You think, listen, I'll tell you. I'll show you who I am. And then he brings God into it. You ever brought God into your revenge? Listen to what he says. May God deal with David. May God deal with me. You're talking in third person. You are worked up, right? May God deal with David, be it ever so severely, if by morning I leave alive one male of all who belong to him. I'm going to kill everybody. I'm going to kill his servants, his friends, his sons, and then I'm going to kill him. Now you read this story and you've got two guys. You've got two guys that are just, Nabal is being irrational. David, though, I mean, this is an overreaction. And you read this story and you're sitting there and you're like, okay, yeah, I get it. Like he shouldn't have taunted David. That was not a good idea. He shouldn't have been so mean. He should have been a little bit more generous because he had so much and all of this. But is this what you do? Is this what you do when things don't go your way? Like we just blow up? David, is this who you want to be? Now, here's the thing with David is we like to tell our kids the good parts of David's story. We don't tell them the other stuff. Put that on flannel graph, right? That doesn't work well. David, if you study his history, this is what he does. And so he's riding along and he's hurt and he's angry and he's powering up. And he's like, you know what? I did good and you repaid it for evil. And so here's the deal. It's going to be evil for evil now. You hurt me, I'll hurt you. Now, I think something that's important to identify that we're going to see here in a second that gets identified. I don't think Nabal is David's real problem. I think David's really mad about Saul. But Saul's not accessible. Nabal is. And so I'm going to take out all of my anger and all of my rage and all of the unfairness of life and all the cruelty of life. I'm taking it out on this guy. He's found a mark. He's found a target, an easy one, for all of the anger that he feels. And some of us, that's where we're at. Now, meanwhile, back in Carmel, there's another character we have to introduce. And so Nabal has a wife, and her name is Abigail. And Abigail is gone when all of this happens. But now she's back. And so her servants, they kind of know what's going on. And I'm sure there's rumors and murmurings of what's happened. And so they go to her and they say, hey, so David, you remember David? And you can read it. It's in 1 Samuel. I don't have time for, but I'll paraphrase it for you. There's just like, hey, David, like he took care of us. And the wealth that we have, the wealth that you have, Abigail, because you're married to Nabal, the wealth that Nabal has now, and all of these good things that are happening to us, it's really because of David and what he was doing for us, even though there wasn't an arrangement, we get that. But, this is because of him, and he was so good to us. He took care of us, he protected us, and then he came to us, and he just had this simple request, just if we could give him some stuff, if we could give him. Now, there's a couple things. This is Abigail, so this is Nabal's wife. So she is in it. So think about this, ladies and gentlemen. She's profiting because of this. So she could have had the same response that Nabal had, that David, like, who's David? This is our sheep. This is my wealth. This is my, Coach bag I get to get now, right? This is my car I get to upgrade. Like, it's mine. And the servants, they look at Abigail and they say, now think it over, verse 17, and see what you can do, because disaster is hanging over our master and his whole household, which includes you. He is such a wicked man that no one can talk to him. And Abigail realizes how bad the situation is. That she's got her husband who's irrational, and we're going to find out this isn't the first time. And now we've got David, who's honestly a little predictable. You wronged me, I'm going to wrong you. And so what is Abigail going to do? So she acts quickly. And so what she does is she tells her servants, hey, I want you guys to assemble a caravan of donkeys. And on these donkeys, I want you to strap on as much food and supplies as you possibly can. And we know that David's got a lot of men up there, and so we're going to take as much as we can. And she says to her servants, she says, you go on with these donkeys filled with this food and these supplies, and I'll meet you out on the plain. I'm going to go talk to David. And so David, he's coming down off this mountain with these 400 men ready for battle, and he's mumbling to himself, and he's building himself up, and he's justifying what he's about to do. I mean, he's working himself up. And what does he see when he comes down the mountain and into the clearing? He sees a caravan of donkeys and a woman walking towards him. And it totally messes up his mood. Like, you ever been in that place where you've got like this speech like perfectly planned? You ever done that? I have. And you know exactly what you're going to say. You're going to walk into the office and you're going to tell them what you think. Or you're on your way home or on your way to that meeting and you're driving your car and you've got your death metal playing, right? And you're raging against the machine, and you're ready to go. You've got it all worked out. And then all of a sudden something happens and it's a distraction. And you were perfectly mad, and David was perfectly mad. He's got all these guys. He's got a plan of what he's going to do. And then there's Abigail. And Abigail, she gets down and she walks towards David. And what she does is so brilliant and so powerful. She speaks to David as if he's already become the man that she hopes he will become. She's going to speak to him in a way as if she hopes and believes that he can be the man that everybody said he actually is. So it says in verse 24, pardon your servant, my Lord, and let me speak to you. Pay no attention to my husband. Women, you ever been there? Pay no attention to this guy. Like, just forget about him. That wicked man, Noble, he is just like his name. His name means fool, and folly goes with him. So she's saying, listen, you're not wrong about my husband, David. Like, you're right. He's being a jerk. He's being mean. He should be thinking through this. Like, I get it. everything that you feel about him, you are accurate. But, and this is so powerful what she's about to do, she's going to start to speak to him in a way in which she believes in who he is. And here's what she says. And now, my Lord, as surely as the Lord your God lives and as you live, since the Lord has kept you from bloodshed, since the Lord has kept you from avenging yourself with your own hands. And David's like, he has? Because he's about to cause bloodshed and avenge. Like, this, what, he has? He's saved me from this? Oh, yeah, David, he saved you from this, right? In other words, David, you're not that person, right? You're not the person that's going to go in here and just like kill everybody, are you? Like, that's not who you are. And she starts to give him credit for being better than he was about to be, right? Women, just so you know, this will work every time. You're so good with the kids. I am? Yeah, you're great with them. You're so patient. I am not, right? And this just ruins his plan. I mean, he's about to go in and slaughter and pillage. And she's like, David, you're not that guy. Listen, go on to verse 28. The Lord your God will certainly make a lasting dynasty for my Lord because you fight the Lord's battles, David. I do? Oh, yeah, David. You fight God's battles. You fight the good battle. And no wrongdoing will be found in you as long as you shall live. It won't? No, David, it won't. And then she refers to King Saul. Because everybody knows that's what's really going on, David. Here's what she says. Even though someone is pursuing you to take your life. Listen, even though I know someone has been unfair to you. Even though, David, I know someone is being mean to you. Even though, David, I know someone has put you in this situation. David, that's not who you are. And she uses some interesting Hebrew imagery, and she kind of does this trick on him where she kind of says, listen, your life is secure in God. Like, you don't need to bother yourself with this. And then she does something really fascinating. She takes David back to 15-year-old David, where all of this began. And she takes him back to this moment where he faced Goliath. I mean, the sword that David has strapped onto him is not even his sword. It's the sword that he took as he cut Goliath's head off. We don't tell the kids that part, right? Takes it off and marches his head back to the city with the Goliath's sword in hand. And that sword becomes David's sword. And it's probably the sword that he's carrying right now. But the lives of your enemies, verse 29, he, God, will hurl away as from the pocket of a sling. David, you don't need to do this. Do you remember your past? Do you remember God's faithfulness to you? Do you remember the 15-year-old shepherd boy that everybody was scared and everybody was terrified and you trusted God and you walked onto that field and you weren't equipped for it? You didn't have a sword. You didn't have armor. All you had was this sling, and God came and he rescued you, David, and God defended you. God, do you remember that, David? You're not the guy that returns evil for evil. You're the one that protects people. You're the one that does what's right. And then she speaks to his future. And she tells him what all of us, and we've talked about this before, need to ask before we make a decision that we're going to regret. What story do you want people to tell when this is just a story, people? Because people are going to talk about this, David. People are going to talk about this moment. What story do you want? Do you want them to tell the story of how you went in and all of your anger and all of you are the man, David, and you just went and slaughtered all of these innocent men? Here's what she says. When the Lord has fulfilled for my Lord every good thing he promised, because David, you've been promised some things, and all of that could be on the line if you do this. Concerning him, as he has appointed him ruler over Israel, my Lord will not have on his conscience the staggering burden of needless bloodshed or having avenged himself. David, when you're the king, you don't want to have on your conscience the story of how some idiot ticked you off and so you went in and just killed everybody. When this is a story that you tell your kids, is this the story you want to tell? When kids go around talking about who you are and what you did, David, is this the story that you want them to tell? About how you repaid evil with evil, how someone was rude and mean to you, and you did this? Is that the narrative you want your life to be about? Or is there a better story? And that question is the question that every single one of us have to deal with. It's so easy to just get mad. You don't know who I am? I'll show you who I am. Right? I'll tell you who I am. Everybody can do that. And so David, he looks at Abigail and he says this. Praise me to the Lord, the God of Israel, who has sent you today to meet me. May you be blessed for your good judgment. Your husband didn't have good judgment. I didn't have good judgment. But you did. See, some of us, what we have to realize is that we've had Abigails in our lives, haven't we? We've had people who saw the situation for what it could become and who had the mindset to say, like, this isn't the story we want to tell, is it? This isn't what we want our lives to be about. Like, this isn't what you want. This isn't what you want your kids to remember, is it? Because it's cyclical, isn't it? Like, I could do this, but it's just going to be passed on to them. We all need an Abigail in our lives, someone who has access to us, someone who can talk us down, someone who can show us a real way to actually move forward. And some of us, our biggest regrets are because we had people that tried to talk us down, but we were so worked up, we just didn't listen, did we? And now some of us, the reason this is the most wonderful time of the year, but also the most awkward time of the year, is because we got to face some of those people that we've hurt. We got to face some of those people that we've done these things to and said these things about, and these relationships that have been tarnished and broken and hurt. See, sometimes in the moment, we do something because in the moment it feels right, but it's not ultimately going to help us get to where we want. And in the moment, sometimes what feels right will come back to haunt us later. And so you have a couple options here. You've got Nabal, who's irrational. You've got David, who's predictable. It's predictable that you're just going to get mad when somebody does something to you. And then you have Abigail, who steps into the situation, diffuses the situation. And I was thinking about this, and I almost don't want to tell you how the story ends, but I will. So she goes back, and David gets the donkeys, and he thanks her again, and he goes back up into the mountains. And then what happens next is she goes back home, and Nabal, he has no idea any of this has been going on. And so he's having a party because he just had a great year, and he's got all this extra money, and, he's drinking. He opened up a bottle of Pappy, all that stuff. Like, it's a good party. So he's sitting there, and he's drunk. And Abigail sees it, and she's like, this is probably not the right time. So she waits till the next morning, and she goes and she tells him what was about to happen. That David was going to come down here and murder you, and then I went and did this. And the Bible says that he became like a stone. It doesn't really explain. He either became hardened or whatever it is. But whatever happened is about 10 days later, he got really sick and he dies. And then David slips into Abigail's DMs, and she's like, hey, I hear you're single now. And she's like, yeah. And they get married. That's how the story ends. So you have a couple of choices here. Yeah, I told you, I didn't want to tell you. But if you're not a Jesus follower, you have choices. You can be irrational, you can be predictable, or you can be like Abigail. Jesus does this interesting thing. It's the hardest teaching of Jesus. Is he says that if you want to be like me, so remind yourself that Jesus, who died for our sins, even though we didn't deserve it, who gives the people who don't deserve it. The Bible even uses language like we are his enemies when he dies for us. He gave us not what we deserved. And then he says this. He says, so if you want to be like me, which is the goal, he says what you need to do is you need to learn love your enemies, which is the hardest teaching of the Bible. And he says not only do you need to learn to love them, but actually you have to be the type of person, if you want to make it better, you have to be willing to do good for them. You have to bless them. See, we thought we were doing good by not punching them, right? By tolerating them, by just ignoring them. Like, that's good. Like, I didn't hurt them. Jesus is like, no. You know, if you want to be like me, you actually have to do good for them. He even says, like, you need to pray for them. Listen, let's be honest. Most of us have a hard time remembering to pray for people we like, much less the people that we don't. But Jesus is like, no, he kind of doubles down. Like you got to do something for them. And I've been baffled by this teaching because it just doesn't make any sense in our world. And then I started thinking about like this story in Abigail, but I think part of the reason that Jesus wants us to do something for them is because that's what keeps us from becoming like them. Jesus says you do for them what they don't deserve. And then he says the bonus, and this is kind of the language used, the bonus of doing this is not only most of the time can you sometimes resolve the tension you have between you and that person, because, see, they're your enemy, they're a mean person. But here's what I've learned. If you start doing nice things for people, give it enough time, and they start to realize you're doing nice things for them, they might actually start to like you. And he says, here's the bonus of doing things for this, is not only might you gain a relationship, but he says you actually, and this is the most important part, you become more like me, which is the whole point, right? Now, I know the pushback on all of this. It's just this. I'm not doing that. I don't like them. They're mean. They're cruel. Can I tell you that there have been a few times, and I can count them on probably two hands, the times that I've actually gotten this right. And here's what I realized when I started to actually do something for someone and pray for them and treat them well, even though they weren't treating me well, is, see, I thought I was doing it for them. And then there's this realization I'm actually doing it for me. I have to do it for them because it's going to do something for me, because of where my heart and my mind is at. And so you can write a predictable story. An evil for evil, bad for bad, because it's what everybody expects, mean for mean. And you might be justified, and your friends would say you're justified, but maybe this is your opportunity to break the cycle. And I don't know your circumstances, and I know it's easy for me to get on a stage and to stand here and tell you, you have to be nice to people even when they're not nice to you. But listen, the only reason I can even tell you that with a straight face is because that is what Jesus did for us. And we all want to write a better story. Now, there's always going to be mean people. And the reality is, sometimes even when you do something nice for them, it doesn't change anything about them. But it might change something in you. And so it's the most wonderful time of the year, and there's going to be mean people, and there's always going to be mean people, and you might be those mean people sometimes. And there's always going to be drama, right? But we don't have time to talk about the drama this week. Let's pray. Father God, we love you. We thank you, God. I hope that we can be inspired to be people who don't just blow up at everything, who don't write the predictable story, who don't write the irrational story, who realize that there might be actually a better story sometimes that can be written. I hope that you give us some Abigails in our lives that can talk us down sometimes and help us not create a situation that we all are going to regret. God, I hope sometimes you give us the conscience of Abigail, that even though what she did for David cost her, God, it made David change. It made her change, God. And we see the beauty of the story that plays out. So give us that patience, give us that wisdom, even in moments where we just want to blow up, God, where we just want to do and impart our own will, God. Give us the grace and the mercy we need to give others. And God, may we remember the only reason we can even begin to do that is because of the grace and the mercy that you've shown us. So we love you. We thank you. In your son's name we pray. Amen.
We come to a time of communion when we remember what was sacrificed on that cross. And if you haven't had a moment, there's still an opportunity to go grab those little cups of juice and crackers by the door. It's the most wonderful time of the year, that start of December. But for a lot of us, it's just, we hit that ground running. We're volunteering at church, and we're doing so much with our kids' schools and family parties and work parties, and we get really overwhelmed with stress and with anxiety, and it's just, we're not the people that we want to be. We're the people that we go home to. So I think what we should do for this communion is take it as we start this season, as a reset. We reset where we want to be for the holiday season, and we remember that Jesus was born and what was sacrificed for us on that cross. So take whatever time you need as we take communion, just be with your Father and think about where you want to be this holiday season. And then stand and worship with us.
If my heart is overwhelmed and I cannot hear your voice, I hold on to what is true, though I cannot see. If the storms of life they come and the road ahead gets steep, I will lift these hands in faith, I will believe. I'll remind myself of all that you've done and the life I have because of your Son. Love came down and rescued me. Love came down and set me free. I am yours. I am forever yours. Mountain high or valley low, I sing out to remind my soul that I am yours. I am forever yours. When my heart is filled with hope, every promise comes my way. When I feel your hands of grace rest upon me, staying desperate for you, God, staying humble at your feet, I will lift these hands in praise, I will believe. I'll remind myself of all that you've done, on the life I have because of your Son. Love came down and rescued me. Love came down and set me free. I am yours. I am forever yours. Mountain high or valley low, I sing out, remind my soul that I am yours. I am forever yours. 'Cause I am yours. I am yours. For all my days, Jesus, I am yours. And I am yours. I am yours. For all my days, Jesus, I am yours. I am yours. I am yours. All my days, Jesus, I am yours. Love came down and rescued me. Love came down and set me free. I am yours. I am forever yours. Mountain high or valley low, I sing out to remind my soul, I am yours. I am forever yours.
Who am I that the highest king would welcome me? I was lost, but he brought me in. Oh, his love for me. Oh, his love for me. Who the Son sets free, oh, is free indeed. I'm a child of God. Yes, I am. Free at last, he has ransomed me. Oh, his grace runs deep. While I was a slave to sin, Jesus died for me. Yes, he died for me. Who the Son sets free, oh, is free indeed. I'm a child of God. Yes, I am. In my Father's house, there's a place for me. I'm a child of God. Yes, I am. I am chosen, not forsaken. I am who you say I am. You are for me, not against me. I am who you say I am. Let's sing that again. I am chosen, not forsaken. I am who you say I am. You are for me, not against me. I am who you say I am. Oh, I am who you say I am. Who the Son sets free, oh, is free indeed. I'm a child of God. Yes, I am. In my Father's house, there's a place for me. I'm a child of God. Yes, I am. In my Father's house, sing it out, church. There's a place for me. I'm a child of God. Yes, I am.
Lost or saved, find their way at the sound of your great name. All condemned, feel no shame at the sound of your great name. Every fear has no place at the sound of your great name. has to leave at the sound of your great name. Jesus, worthy is the Lamb that was slain for us. Son of God and man, you are high and lifted up, and all the world will praise your great name. Like the weak will find their strength at the sound of your great name. Hungry souls receive grace at the sound of your great name. The fatherless find their rest at the sound of your great name. The sick are healed, the dead are raised at the sound of your great name. Jesus, worthy is the Lamb that was slain for us. Son of God and man, you are high and lifted up, and all the world will praise your great name. Redeemer, my healer, Lord Almighty, Defender, my Savior, you are my King. Redeemer, my healer, Lord Almighty, Defender, my Savior, you are my King. Jesus, worthy is the Lamb that was slain for us. The Son of God and man, you are high and lifted up, and all the world will praise your great name. Your great name.
It's been wonderful worshiping with you all today. Just remember, if you are setting up for Grinchmas or Grinchmas this week, we really appreciate you. If you are staying today, make sure that you go over to the Children's Church. We'll see you this week at a Not So Grinchmas Christmas or next Sunday. Have a great week.